The massive space station hung in the void like a silver city among the stars. Nexus Prime was the largest structure ever built by any known species, stretching over 300 kilometers from end to end. Its gleaming halls had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over the past 5,000 years. Today, it would witness something entirely new. Ambassador Li Teho stepped out of the human transport ship and onto the docking platform. He was a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. Behind him walked Captain Park Ji-min, her military uniform crisp and her hand never far from her weapon. They were the first humans to ever set foot on Nexus Prime. The alien beings waiting to greet them were unlike anything most humans had ever seen. Elder Counselor Vexthara of the Helian Collective stood nearly 3 meters tall, her blue skin shimmering with natural patterns that shifted like living tattoos. Her 4 arms moved gracefully as she gestured welcome. Beside her, the insect-like representative of the mantid chorus clicked his mandibles in what passed for their species version of a smile. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Vexthara said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "We have waited long to meet the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel." Li Teho bowed slightly. "We are honored to be here, Elder Counselor. Earth looks forward to peaceful relations with all members of the Galactic Council." The procession moved through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others floated through the air on energy fields, and a few rolled along on mechanical wheels. The diversity was staggering, yet Li noticed something interesting. Despite their different forms, all of these species shared one thing in common. They all looked at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and barely hidden condescension. The council chamber was a vast, circular room with seats arranged in tiers. 12 species had governed galactic affairs for millennia, and their representatives sat in ornate chairs that reflected their homeworld cultures. The human delegation was shown to 2 simple seats at the bottom of the chamber. "Before we begin formal proceedings," Vexthara announced, "we must explain the fundamental laws that have maintained peace in our galaxy for over 3,000 years. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing star maps and trade routes that connected hundreds of worlds. The technology was impressive, but Li noticed that Captain Park remained unimpressed. Earth's holographic systems were actually more advanced, though the humans saw no need to mention this fact. "The first and most important law," continued Vexthara, "is the doctrine of non-interference. No species may attack, disable, or interfere with another species' military vessels while they operate in neutral space. This law has prevented countless wars and saved billions of lives." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. Several alien representatives nodded their various types of heads in approval. This was clearly a rule they all took very seriously. Li Teho stood slowly. "We appreciate this wisdom, Elder Counselor. Earth agrees that unprovoked attacks on military vessels would be unacceptable." "Excellent," said the representative of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium, a being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a tree. "Then you understand the importance of measured responses. When conflicts arise, we negotiate. We apply economic pressure. Sometimes we engage in limited military actions with clear rules of engagement. But we never, ever target civilian populations or engage in total warfare." Captain Park looked up from her notes. "That's an interesting approach. However, Earth operates under different principles." The chamber fell silent. This was not the response they had expected from the newcomers. Park continued in a steady voice. "Earth's fleet operates under one absolute law. Any interference with our military vessels, regardless of intent or justification, results in the complete elimination of the interfering species." The silence stretched longer. Then nervous laughter began to ripple through the chamber. Several representatives exchanged glances that clearly said they thought the humans were engaging in typical new species posturing. The representative of the Nexus Federation, a crystalline being whose body chimed like bells when he moved, spoke up. "Surely you don't mean complete elimination. Perhaps you mean military defeat? Occupation?" Forced tribute? No, Park said simply. Complete elimination. Every world, every ship, every member of the species, extinction. More laughter echoed through the chamber, though it sounded more nervous now. Vextara raised one of her 4 hands for silence. Captain Park, we understand that new species often feel the need to project strength during first contact. But surely, you realize that such extreme policies are both impractical and impossible to implement. Li Teho stood again. Elder Counselor, we are not projecting strength. We are stating policy. Earth does not make threats or engage in diplomatic posturing. We are simply informing you of cause and effect. The representative of the Valdorian Empire, a being that resembled a walking octopus made of metal, spoke with obvious disdain. Young species, you have barely mastered interstellar travel. What could you possibly do to civilizations that have ruled the stars for thousands of years? Hopefully, Li said quietly, you will never find out. The formal proceedings continued for several hours. Treaties were signed, trade agreements were discussed, and diplomatic protocols were established. But throughout the meeting, Li noticed the subtle looks and whispered conversations among the alien representatives. They clearly did not take humanity's warning seriously. During a recess, Vextara approached the human delegation privately. Ambassador Li, I hope you understand that your species' stated policy is quite concerning to many council members. Perhaps we could discuss a more moderate approach. Elder Counselor, Li replied, we have stated our position clearly. We hope it never becomes relevant. But surely you realize that accidents happen, misunderstandings occur? In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, there have been countless incidents of ships interfering with each other for perfectly innocent reasons. Navigation errors, communication failures, emergency situations that require immediate action. Captain Park looked up from the star charts she was studying. Then those species should be very careful around Earth vessels. After the formal session ended, the human delegation prepared to depart. As they walked back toward their transport, they passed groups of alien representatives engaged in animated discussions. Li's enhanced hearing picked up fragments of conversation. Arrogant primitivs ... typical new species bluster. Someone should teach them their place ... The Zephyrians handled the last upstarts well enough ... Commander Kim So-ra was waiting aboard the human transport when they returned. She had been monitoring galactic communications during the meeting, and her expression was grim. Ambassador, she reported, I've detected significant chatter among several species' military networks. They're not taking our warnings seriously. In fact, some seem to view it as a challenge. Li sighed as he settled into his chair. That's unfortunate. File a complete report to Earth Fleet Command. Include full recordings of all interactions and our assessment of galactic attitudes toward our stated policy. Already done, sir. Fleet Command acknowledges receipt and confirms that all Earth vessels have been briefed on the new diplomatic situation. As their ship departed Nexus Prime and entered hyperspace for the journey back to Earth, Li stared out at the stars rushing past. In his report, he would write that first contact had been successful from a diplomatic standpoint. Treaties were signed, relationships established, and trade opportunities identified. But he would also note that the galactic community did not seem to understand the nature of humanity's commitment to protecting their fleet. They viewed Earth's absolute policy as the bluster of a young species trying to establish its reputation. That misunderstanding, Li feared, would prove costly for someone. The only question was which species would be the first to test humanity's resolve. In the depths of space, Earth's exploration vessels continued their missions, each one carrying a quantum communication beacon capable of instantly alerting Fleet Command to any interference. The crews had been briefed on the new protocols. If threatened or attacked, they were to issue one warning with a 30-second deadline. After that, diplomacy would be irrelevant. The Galactic Council had been told exactly what would happen, whether they chose to believe it was now out of humanity's hands. 3 months had passed since the meeting at Nexus Prime. The galaxy continued its ancient rhythms of trade and diplomacy, but beneath the surface, tensions were building. Many species had discussed the humans and their strange ultimatum. Most had dismissed it as the empty posturing of a young civilization trying to seem important, the Zephyrian trade. Consortium was one of those species that refused to take the humans seriously. Captain Yoon Jae-sung stood on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel New Seoul, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. His ship was conducting routine deep space surveys near the Kepler void, a region of space known for its unusual energy readings and potential for new discoveries. The New Seoul was not a warship. It carried scientific equipment, sample collection devices, and enough weapons to defend against pirates or dangerous wildlife. Nothing more. Yoon was a veteran of the Earth Space Service, having commanded 3 different vessels over his 15-year career. He was known for his calm demeanor and careful decision-making. His crew of 43 respected him, and Earth Fleet Command trusted him with important missions far from home. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Park Sun-mi from the sensor station, "I'm detecting multiple ships approaching our position. Configuration suggests Zephyrian military vessels." Yoon frowned. The Zephyrians controlled several trade routes in this region, but they had no legitimate reason to approach an Earth science vessel conducting surveys in neutral space. "How many ships, Lieutenant?" 12 vessels, sir. Looks like a full squadron. They're maintaining formation and approaching at standard military speed." The communications officer, Ensign Lee Dong-ho, looked up from his station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Zephyrian vessel. Put it on screen." The main display shifted from the star field to show the interior of a Zephyrian bridge. Admiral Zhao Linda appeared on screen, her reptilian features arranged in what humans had learned was the Zephyrian expression of superiority. Behind her, the bridge crew moved with the precise efficiency of a military unit that had never faced a real challenge. "Human vessel," Admiral Zhao said, her voice carrying the tone of someone addressing a disobedient child. "You are operating in space claimed by the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. Prepare to be boarded for inspection of your vessel and cargo." Remained seated in his command chair, his expression unchanging. "Admiral Zhao, this is Captain Yoon of the Earth. Vessel New Seoul. We are conducting scientific surveys in neutral space according to standard galactic protocols. We have no cargo to inspect, and our mission presents no threat to Zephyrian interests." The Admiral's laugh was a harsh sound that reminded Yoon of grinding metal. "Captain Yoon, you mistake your position. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium has decided that all human vessels must submit to inspection and comply with our authority in this sector. This is not a request." Around the bridge, Yoon's crew tensed. They had all been briefed on Earth's new diplomatic policy following the Nexus Prime meeting. Every Earth vessel now carried specific instructions on how to respond to interference from other species. "Admiral," Yoon said quietly, "I must inform you that any attempt to board, disable, or otherwise interfere with this vessel will be considered an act of aggression against Earth Fleet Command. Are you threatening me, human?" Zhao's voice rose in pitch, a sign of anger among her species. "Your single ship against my squadron? Your primitive weapons against Zephyrian military technology?" Yoon glanced at his tactical officer, Commander Kim Jin-woo, who gave a subtle nod. The ship's quantum communication beacon was ready for activation. All Earth vessels carried these devices, capable of instantly transmitting messages across vast distances using quantum entanglement, principles that most galactic species had not yet mastered. "Admiral Zhao," Yoon said, his voice remaining perfectly calm, "you have 30 seconds to withdraw your squadron and cease all interference with this vessel. This is your only warning." The laughter that came from the Zephyrian bridge was joined by voices from other ships in the squadron. To them, the idea that a single human science vessel could threaten an entire Zephyrian military formation was absurd beyond measure. "Human captain," Zhao said between laughs, "you clearly do not understand your situation. We have 12 military vessels. You have 1 science ship. We have weapons capable of destroying planets. You have survey equipment. Perhaps we should teach you the reality of galactic power structures. Yun looked at his chronometer. 20 seconds had passed. He turned to his communications officer. Ensign Lee, prepare the quantum beacon for transmission to Earth Fleet Command. Use Protocol 7 authorization codes. Sir, Lee said, his fingers moving quickly over his console. Beacon is ready. Protocol 7 codes are loaded and verified. The remaining 10 seconds seemed to stretch forever. On the main screen, Admiral Zhao was giving orders to her fleet. Energy fields began to form around the human vessel as the Zephyrian ships activated their interdiction systems. These fields would prevent the new soul from entering hyperspace or maneuvering effectively. Time, announced Commander Kim. Yoon nodded once. Activate the beacon. Transmit our position, tactical situation, and evidence of Zephyrian interference with Earth fleet operations. The quantum beacon sent its message instantly across the galaxy. On Earth, at Fleet Command Headquarters, emergency alarms began to sound as the transmission was received and decoded. Yoon turned back to the main screen, where Admiral Zhao was watching the strange activity aboard the human vessel with growing confusion. Admiral Zhao, Yoon said, Earth Fleet Command has been notified of your interference with our vessel. You now have 12 hours to evacuate all Zephyrian space. After that time, the consequences will be irreversible. Zephyrian. Admiral's expression changed from amusement to anger. You dare to threaten the Zephyrian Trade Consortium? We have ruled these trade routes for over 4,000 years. We have destroyed entire fleets of pirates and rebels. What could your pathetic Earth possibly do to us? Around the bridge of the New Soul, the crew worked calmly and efficiently. They had trained for this scenario, though none of them had expected it to happen so soon after first contact with galactic civilization. Sir, reported the engineering officer, Lieutenant Commander Cho Min-seok, all systems are ready for Protocol 7 implementation. Yoon stood from his command chair and walked to the center of the bridge. He looked at each member of his crew, seeing their determination and understanding. They all knew what Protocol 7 meant. They all knew what choice they were about to make. Admiral Zhao, Yoon said, his voice now carrying a formal tone that the Zephyrians would later remember as the last diplomatic words they ever heard from humanity. You were given a warning according to standard Earth Fleet protocols. You chose to ignore that warning and continue your interference with our vessel. The consequences of this decision extend far beyond your current actions. The Zephyrian began to respond, but Yoon continued speaking. In accordance with Earth's stated policy regarding interference with fleet operations, your species has been marked for extinction. The process will begin in 12 hours. Use that time wisely. The laughter from the Zephyrian bridge was even louder now. Admiral Zhao turned to her bridge crew, clearly enjoying what she saw as an elaborate joke from the primitive humans. This human captain believes his single ship can threaten our entire civilization, she announced to her crew. Perhaps we should demonstrate the folly of such thinking. Begin boarding procedures. Yoon looked at his crew one final time. It has been an honor serving with all of you, he said quietly. Protocol 7, final authorization. Commander Kim. Input the final codes at his station. Throughout the ship, systems began to activate that had never been used before. These were not weapons designed to fight other ships. They were designed to ensure that no Earth vessel could ever be captured or compromised. The new soul began to glow with an internal light that grew brighter by the second. The Zephyrian boarding shuttles were halfway to the human vessel when the light became blinding. Admiral Zhao had just enough time to realize that the humans were not bluffing before the new soul released energy equivalent to a small star going supernova. The explosion consumed the human vessel and all 12 Zephyrian ships instantly. In the silence that followed, the Kepler void was empty except for slowly expanding clouds of ionized gas. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium had just lost an entire military squadron and its most experienced admiral. More importantly, they had just discovered that humans meant exactly what they said. On Earth, in the deepest levels of Fleet Command Headquarters, Admiral Han Du-hyen received the quantum beacon transmission and the confirmation of Protocol 7 activation. He looked at the tactical display showing Zephyrian space and made a note in his personal log. The Yoon incident confirms that Galactic species do not understand Earth's commitment to fleet protection protocols. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium has chosen Extinction. First extermination fleet will deploy in 11 hours, 47 minutes. The timer had begun. In less than 12 hours, the galaxy would learn what happened when someone interfered with Earth's fleet. Exactly 11 hours and 57 minutes after the destruction of the New Sol, the first spatial distortions appeared at the edge of Zephyrian space. The early warning sensors on the outer monitoring stations detected massive ripples in space-time, the kind of signatures that indicated large fleets emerging from hyperspace. General Han Du-hyen stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Incheon's Fury, watching the tactical displays as his fleet materialized in normal space. 200 vessels appeared in perfect formation, their dark hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. These were not exploration ships or cargo vessels. These were instruments of war, built for one purpose only, the first Earth extermination. Fleet had arrived. Han was a career military officer who had served in Earth's conflicts before humanity reached the stars. He had fought in the resource wars of 2157 and commanded ground forces during the Mars independence crisis. He understood warfare in all its forms, but he had never commanded a mission quite like this one. "Sir," reported his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Colonel Park Min-ho, all vessels report ready status. Long-range sensors are detecting the Zephyrian home fleet moving to intercept positions." Han nodded slowly. The Zephyrians were reacting exactly as Earth strategists had predicted. They were treating this as a conventional military engagement, something that could be won through superior numbers and firepower. They were catastrophically wrong. "Colonel Park, what is the current size of the Zephyrian military response?" "Sir, we're detecting over 3,000 vessels converging on our position. They appear to be mobilizing their entire military. Long-range scans show several of their legendary planet-killer ships among the fleet." Around the bridge, human officers worked calmly at their stations. There was no excitement, no fear, no anticipation of glorious battle. They were professionals carrying out a mission that had been planned down to the smallest detail. "Communications," Han said. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian fleet commander." The main screen shifted to show the bridge of a massive Zephyrian dreadnought. Fleet Admiral Kextara appeared on screen, her reptilian features showing the confidence of a commander who had never lost a battle. Behind her, dozens of Zephyrian officers moved with the efficient precision of a military that had dominated this region of space for millennia. "Human general?" Kextara said, her voice carrying the tone of someone addressing an inferior. "You have made a grave mistake coming here. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium controls over 400 star systems and commands the largest military force in this sector. Your 200 ships cannot hope to match our power." Han looked at the display showing the massive Zephyrian fleet spreading across space in traditional battle formations. "Fleet Admiral, I am General Han Du-hyen of the 1st Earth Extermination Fleet. 12 hours ago, your forces interfered with an Earth vessel in violation of our stated policies. The consequences of that action are now inevitable. The Zephyrian Admiral's laugh was the same harsh sound that Admiral Zhao had made before her death. "General Han, perhaps you do not understand the situation. We have 3,000 ships. You have 200. We have weapons capable of destroying entire planets. We have armor and shields that have never been penetrated. What could your primitive vessels possibly do against the might of our civilization?" Han turned to his tactical officer. "Colonel Park, begin deployment of the quantum cascade bombs. Target all Zephyrian suns within their territorial space." Park's fingers moved across his console with practiced efficiency. "Sir, cascade bombs are armed and targeted. We have locks on 17 star systems containing Zephyrian worlds." On the main screen, Fleet Admiral Kextara was giving orders to her fleet. The Zephyrian ships began to move into attack positions, their weapons charging, and their shields activating. It was an impressive display of military might that would have terrified any conventional enemy. "Fleet Admiral," Han said, "you have one final opportunity to understand the nature of this situation. This is not a battle. This is an extinction event. Your species chose to interfere with Earth's fleet. The result is the complete elimination of your civilization." The Zephyrian admiral's expression shifted from amusement to anger. "You dare threaten the Zephyrian Trade Consortium with extinction? We have survived asteroid impacts, supernovas, and the rise and fall of dozens of other species. We are eternal." Han looked at his chronometer. Exactly 12 hours had passed since the destruction of the new Sol. "Colonel Park, execute Protocol Omega, all targets, simultaneous detonation." Across Zephyrian space, devices no larger than basketballs suddenly appeared in the cores of 17 different stars. The quantum cascade bombs had been delivered by technology that the Zephyrians could not detect or defend against. Each bomb contained compressed exotic matter that, when released, would cause a star to undergo catastrophic collapse and subsequent supernova explosion. The first star to die was Zephyr Prime, the home sun of the Zephyrian civilization. The quantum cascade reaction spread through the stellar core in seconds, causing the massive star to collapse and then explode with the force of 10 billion hydrogen bombs, detonating every second. The explosion sterilized every planet in the system instantly. Zephyrian Prime, home to over 12 billion beings, ceased to exist in the time it took for light to travel from the star to the planetary surface on the main screen. Fleet Admiral Kexthara was still giving orders to her fleet when the light from her homeworld's destruction reached their position. Her expression changed from confidence to horror as she realized what she was seeing. "Impossible," she whispered. "Our homeworld ... our people ... Colonel Park," Han said calmly, "deploy the nanite swarms. Target all remaining Zephyrian vessels and installations." Throughout space, clouds of microscopic machines materialized around every Zephyrian ship and space station. The nanites had been programmed with one simple directive: disassemble all Zephyrian technology down to the molecular level. The effect was horrifying to witness. The massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts, vessels that had ruled space for thousands of years, began to simply fall apart. Their hulls dissolved like sugar in rain as the nanites broke apart the molecular bonds that held them together. Fleet Admiral Kexthara watched her flagship crumble around her, the bridge dissolving even as she tried to comprehend what was happening. Her final transmission was a single word: "Why?" Han answered, though he knew she could no longer hear him. "Because you were warned." The nanite swarm spread throughout Zephyrian space with mechanical efficiency. Every space station, every orbital facility, every asteroid mining operation was systematically disassembled. The machines worked with perfect precision, ensuring that no Zephyrian technology would survive, but the nanites were only the beginning. "Sir," reported Commander Yang Taemin from the science station, "temporal disruption fields are ready for deployment. We have targeting solutions for all Zephyrian colonies and outposts." The temporal disruption fields were perhaps the most terrifying weapon in Earth's arsenal. They did not destroy their targets in the conventional sense. Instead, they erased them from the timeline, making it as if they had never existed at all. "Deploy the fields," Han ordered. "Complete temporal erasure of all Zephyrian presence." Across 400 star systems, reality began to shift. Zephyrian colonies that had existed for thousands of years simply vanished, not destroyed but removed from history itself. The temporal fields worked backward through time, erasing every trace of Zephyrian civilization from the moment of their first contact with Earth's fleet. The process took exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. When it was complete, the space that had once contained the Zephyrian Trade Consortium was empty. Not destroyed, not conquered, but simply vacant, as if no civilization had ever existed there at all. General Han stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays show empty space where moments before had been one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. His officers worked quietly at their stations, cataloging the results and preparing their reports. "Sir," said Lieutenant Colonel Park, "all objectives completed. Zephyrian species eliminated, no survivors detected. Han nodded once. Send the completion report to Earth Fleet Command. Include full tactical analysis and resource expenditure. Data? He paused, looking at the empty star charts one final time. Also prepare a transmission to the Galactic Council. Inform them that the Zephyrian Trade Consortium has been eliminated in accordance with Earth's stated policy regarding interference with fleet operations. The transmission would reach Nexus Prime in 6 hours. When it did, the remaining galactic civilizations would learn that humanity had not been making empty threats during first contact. They had been stating simple facts about cause and effect. As the first Earth extermination fleet prepared to return to Earth, General Han made a final entry in his mission log. The Zephyrian incident demonstrates the need for clear communication regarding Earth's fleet protection protocols. Other species appear to view our policies as negotiation tactics rather than absolute statements of inevitable consequences. He looked out at the stars, wondering which civilization would be next to test humanity's resolve. Recommend continued monitoring of galactic communications for signs of additional interference planning. The galaxy must understand that Earth's warnings are not threats to be evaluated, but natural laws to be respected. The fleet entered hyperspace, leaving behind empty space where an ancient civilization had once thrived. In the depths of that emptiness, automated beacons began broadcasting a simple message in all known galactic languages. This space was once occupied by the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. They interfered with Earth fleet operations. Learn from their choice. The transmission from General Han reached Nexus Prime during the night cycle, when most of the station's inhabitants were resting. The automated communication systems processed the message and immediately triggered emergency protocols. Within minutes, alarms were sounding throughout the massive structure, calling all Galactic Council members to an immediate session. Elder Counselor Vexthara arrived at the council chamber still wearing her sleeping robes, her forearms trembling as she read the report on her personal display. Around her, representatives of the remaining 11 species gathered with expressions of shock and disbelief. The message was simple and direct. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium has been eliminated in accordance with Earth's stated policy regarding interference with fleet operations. Duration of operation, 3 hours, 17 minutes. Survivors, 0. Earth Fleet Command considers this matter closed. The representative of the mantid chorus, an insect-like being called hive singer Kethra, was the first to speak. This must be some kind of mistake. The Zephyrians controlled over 400 star systems. They had the largest military force in this sector. How could 200 human ships destroy an entire civilization? Vexthara accessed the Council's long-range sensor data with growing horror. The space that had once contained Zephyrian territory was showing as completely empty on all scans. Not destroyed, not damaged, but simply void of any signs that a civilization had ever existed there. The sensor data confirms the human report, she said quietly. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium no longer exists. The crystalline representative of the Nexus Federation, whose body chimed like broken bells when he moved, turned his geometric head toward the empty seats where Zephyrian delegates once sat. But how is this possible? The Zephyrians had planet-killer weapons. They had shields that could withstand supernova explosions. They had survived for over 4,000 years. Dr. Choi Yun-soo entered the chamber at that moment, still officially serving as Earth's scientific liaison to the Galactic Council. She had been awakened by the emergency alert and had spent the past hour reviewing the tactical reports from General Han's fleet. The alien representatives turned to look at her. Their various forms of eyes showing mixtures of fear, anger, and desperate hope that somehow this was all a misunderstanding. Dr. Choi, Vexthara said, her voice carefully controlled, perhaps you can explain what has happened to our Zephyrian colleagues. Choi took her seat calmly, placing a datapad on the table before her. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium interfered with Earth fleet operations 12 hours ago. They were warned of the consequences and chose to ignore that warning. The result was their complete elimination, as stated in our original policy declaration. The representative of the Valdorian Empire, a metallic octopus-like being called Strategist Quinder, slammed one of his mechanical arms against his desk. This is madness. You cannot simply eliminate entire civilizations because of minor incidents. There must be proportional responses, diplomatic solutions, negotiated settlements. The Zephyrians had those options, Troy replied. They chose to ignore our warning and proceed with their interference. The consequence was predetermined and clearly stated. Hive Singer Kethra leaned forward, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Dr. Choi, surely you understand that what your species has done is unprecedented in galactic history. No civilization has ever completely eliminated another over such a minor incident. That is because other civilizations view warfare as a negotiation. Tool, Choi explained, her voice remaining calm despite the growing tension in the chamber. You see military conflict as something with rules, limitations, and acceptable outcomes. Humans see interference with our vessels as an existential threat requiring total response. She activated her datapad projecting holographic displays. Into the center of the chamber, the images showed the weapon systems used against the Zephyrians: quantum cascade bombs, nanite swarms, temporal disruption fields. The galaxy operates under the assumption that all species share similar approaches to conflict resolution, Troy continued. You assume that everyone sees war as a means to achieve political goals through measured application of force. This assumption is incorrect when applied to humanity. Strategist Quinder had been analyzing the weapon data with his built-in tactical computers. His metallic form grew still as the implications became clear. These weapons, the quantum cascade technology alone represents a level of advancement that should not be possible for a species that achieved interstellar travel only recently. More concerning, added the representative of the crystal hegemony, is the fact that these appear to be standard deployment weapons. The tactical reports suggest that Earth considers these tools conventional rather than exotic. Vexthara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. Dr. Choi, are you saying that the weapons used against the Zephyrians were not your most advanced military technology? Correct, Choi replied. The first extermination fleet was equipped with standard deployment systems appropriate for rapid civilization elimination. Our more advanced weapons remain in reserve for larger-scale operations. The silence that followed this statement stretched for nearly a full minute. Representatives who had governed galactic affairs for millennia struggled to process the implications of what they were hearing. Finally, the representative of the Helian Collective, a floating energy being called Harmony Keeper Velther, spoke in tones that resonated with barely controlled fear. Dr. Choi, what constitutes a larger-scale operation in human military doctrine? Multiple species acting in coordination against Earth interests, Choi answered. Single-species elimination requires standard extermination fleets. Multi-species conflicts would require deployment of our strategic deterrent systems. Strategist Quinder's tactical computers were working frantically, analyzing fleet movements and communication patterns throughout the galaxy. What he discovered made his mechanical limbs tremble. There are already 3 species beginning to coordinate against humanity. The Valdorian Empire, the Nexus Federation, and the Crystal Hegemony have been conducting joint military exercises since the first contact meeting. The representatives of those 3 species looked at each other with growing alarm. What had seemed like reasonable defensive preparations now appeared to be potential suicide pacts. Dr. Choi, Vexthara said carefully, surely these defensive preparations by concerned species would not trigger additional extermination responses from Earth. That depends entirely on their actions, Choi replied. If they coordinate attacks against Earth vessels or territories, they will be eliminated. If they coordinate to threaten Earth interests, they will be eliminated. If they coordinate to impose restrictions on Earth fleet operations, they will be eliminated. The Crystal Hegemony representative, a being of living gemstones called Facet Mind Caxthul, spoke with the sound of grinding stone. You are describing a situation where any defensive cooperation between species could result in total extinction. This creates an impossible situation for galactic stability. No, Troy said, it creates a very stable situation. Species that do not interfere with Earth fleet operations will continue to exist. Species that do interfere will be eliminated. The rules are simple and absolute. At that moment, Captain Leah Sujin materialized as a hologram in the chamber. She was commanding the Earth intelligence vessel Bisson Shadow, which had been monitoring galactic communications since the Zephyrian incident. Dr. Choi, Lee said, I have urgent intelligence to report. Long-range sensors are detecting coordinated fleet movements by multiple species. The Valdorian Empire is moving 3 battle groups toward our outer territories. The Nexus Federation is positioning interdiction fleets along major trade routes. The Crystal Hegemony is deploying what appears to be a siege formation around our diplomatic outposts. The 3 species representatives mentioned in the report began speaking simultaneously, their voices overlapping in desperate attempts to explain their actions as purely defensive measures. Choi held up one hand for silence. Captain Lee, recommend. Protocol 7 implementation for all Earth vessels in the affected regions. Already implemented, Doctor. All Earth ships have been briefed and are ready. Fleet Command has also authorized Protocol 9 for this situation. Several alien representatives made sounds of distress. They had no idea what Protocol 9 entailed, but given what Protocol 7 had accomplished against the Zephyrians, they could imagine the implications. Dr. Choi, Vexthara said urgently, surely there is still time for diplomatic resolution. These species are acting out of fear, not malice. They saw what happened to the Zephyrians and are trying to protect themselves. Their motivations are irrelevant, Choi replied. Their actions constitute coordinated interference with Earth fleet operations. The consequence is predetermined. She stood from her chair and gathered her datapad. I recommend that all species represented here review their current military dispositions and ensure they are not taking actions that could be interpreted as interference with Earth interests. How long do they have? Asked Hivesinger Kethra. The same amount of time the Zephyrians had, Choi answered. 12 hours from the moment of first interference. As she walked toward the chamber exit, Vexthara called after her. Dr. Choi, what happens when your species has eliminated all potential threats? What happens when we are no longer useful to you? Choi paused at the doorway and turned back to face the assembled representatives. Humans do not conquer for the sake of conquest. We preserve what serves our interests and eliminate what threatens them. As long as you never interfere with our fleet operations, you will survive to see the heat death of the universe. She gestured toward the empty chairs where Zephyrian representatives once sat. But the moment you cross that line, you will join them in extinction. After she left, the remaining representatives sat in stunned silence. Outside the great windows of Nexus Prime, stars continued their ancient dance across the void. But the galaxy had changed forever. The age of negotiated conflicts and limited warfare was ending. The age of absolute consequences had begun. The attack came at dawn, Galactic Standard Time, exactly 72 hours after the Zephyrian elimination. The alliance of 3 species had convinced themselves that swift action could prevent humanity from deploying their extinction weapons. They believed that by avoiding direct confrontation with Earth fleet vessels and instead targeting human colonies and trade routes, they could force a surrender without triggering the absolute response protocols. They were catastrophically wrong, Admiral. Song Kyung-ho received the alert while reviewing tactical reports in his quarters aboard the flagship Seoul's Vengeance. The Second Earth Extermination Fleet had been on standby since Captain Lee's intelligence report. 500 next-generation warships hidden in the dark spaces between stars, waiting for the inevitable. Sir, came the voice of his aide through the communication system, Fleet Command reports multiple coordinated attacks on our outer colonies. The Valdorian Empire has struck 3 mining settlements. The Nexus Federation is blockading our trade routes in the Kepler sector. The Crystal Hegemony has begun orbital bombardment of our research stations. Song dressed quickly and made his way to the bridge. Unlike the first extermination fleet's conventional warships, The second fleet consisted of vessels designed specifically for multi-species elimination. Each ship carried weapons that most civilizations would consider violations of the laws of physics themselves. The bridge was a study in controlled efficiency. Officers worked at their stations with the calm professionalism that had become the hallmark of Earth's military. There was no excitement, no anticipation of glorious battle. There was only the methodical preparation for the systematic elimination of 3 entire civilizations. Colonel Lim Hae-won, Song called to his tactical coordinator. Status report. On enemy actions. Lim looked up from her displays, her expression showing the cold focus of someone who had helped plan the complete destruction of multiple species. Sir, the Alliance is targeting 17 human colonies and 43 commercial vessels. They appear to believe they can avoid triggering our fleet protection protocols by not directly engaging our military ships. Flawed logic, Song observed. Any attack on human interests constitutes interference with Earth fleet operations. How long until we reach optimal deployment positions? 37 minutes, sir. All fleet elements report ready for Protocol 9 implementation. Song nodded and activated the main display, showing the positions of enemy fleets throughout the galaxy. The Valdorian Empire had committed 8 battle groups to their attacks. The Nexus Federation had deployed their entire siege fleet. The Crystal Hegemony was using their legendary World Shaper vessels, weapons capable of restructuring entire planets. It would not be enough. Communications, Song ordered. Open channels to all 3 enemy fleet commanders simultaneously. The main screen divided into 3 sections, showing the bridges of the Alliance commanders. General Faxmer of the Valdorian Empire appeared as a mechanical being of immense size, his metal arms gleaming with built-in weapons. Admiral Crystallix of the Nexus Federation was a being of pure energy contained within a humanoid force field. Hive Queen Sectara of the Crystal Hegemony resembled a living mountain of precious stones, her faceted surface reflecting light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Human Admiral, General Faxmer spoke first, his voice like grinding gears, your species' reign of terror ends today. The Alliance of Civilized Species will not allow you to continue your campaign of extinction. Admiral Crystallix's energy form pulsed with anger. We have taken care to avoid your military vessels, human. We target only your civilian assets. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to continue existing under proper supervision. Hive Queen Sectara as Crystalline. Voice chimed like breaking glass. Your ultimatums and threats have no power here. 3 species stand united against your barbarism. You cannot eliminate us all. Song looked at each commander in turn, his expression unchanged. You have made a fundamental error in judgment. You believe that avoiding direct confrontation with Earth fleet vessels will prevent our extinction protocols from activating. This belief is incorrect. He turned to his tactical officer. Colonel Lim explained to our guests the nature of their mistake. Lim stepped into view of the communication array. Any attack on human interests, regardless of target or method, constitutes interference with Earth fleet operations. Your coordinated assault has triggered Protocol 9 multi-species extinction event. The 3 Alliance commanders exchanged glances across their communication links. They had expected threats, negotiations, perhaps even limited military response. They had not expected calm acknowledgement of their impending elimination. You speak of eliminating 3 civilizations as if discussing the weather, General Faxmer said, his mechanical voice carrying what might have been uncertainty. Because to us it is equally inevitable, Song replied. Colonel Lim, begin deployment of the quantum war machines. Throughout the Second Extermination Fleet, cargo bays opened to release clouds of devices no larger than insects. These were not the nanite swarms used against the Zephyrians. These were self-replicating war machines, each one capable of building copies of itself from any available matter while simultaneously destroying everything around them. The quantum war machines spread through space at faster-than-light speeds, using technology that bent the laws of physics to their will. Within minutes, they had reached every star system controlled by the 3 Alliance species. Impossible, Admiral Crystallix said, her energy form flickering with distress. Our sensors show your devices have somehow bypassed our defensive perimeters. Instantly. How are you achieving faster-than-light deployment? Trade secret, Song replied. Commander Yang Taemin, deploy the reality bombs. Yang Station came alive with displays showing targets throughout Alliance space. The reality bombs were weapons that most human scientists refused to work on, devices that could alter the fundamental constants of physics within limited areas. When deployed against a planet, they would change the atomic structure of matter itself, making it impossible for complex molecules to form. The effect was not death in any conventional sense. It was the elimination of the possibility of life itself? Sir, reported Major Park Seri from the Temporal Warfare Station, Chronoton. Disruptors are ready for deployment. We have targeting solutions for all Alliance homeworlds. The Chronoton disruptors were perhaps the most horrifying weapons in Earth's arsenal. They did not destroy their targets in the present. Instead, they reached back through time and prevented the Alliance species from ever evolving in the first place. Deploy all systems, Song ordered. Complete elimination of the Valdorian Empire, Nexus Federation, and Crystal Hegemony. Timeline erasure authorized. On the main screen, the three Alliance commanders watched in growing horror as their civilizations began to die around them. The quantum war machines were systematically dismantling every piece of technology in Alliance space. The reality bombs were sterilizing entire worlds by making it impossible for matter to form complex structures. The Chronoton disruptors were working backward through time, erasing the Alliance species from history itself. General Faxmer-S mechanical form began to flicker as the reality bombs reached his homeworld. This is impossible. We have defensive systems that have protected us for 10,000 years. Your defenses were designed to stop conventional weapons. Song explained, we do not use conventional weapons. Admiral Crystallix's energy form was becoming unstable as her species. Energy-based civilization was unraveled by the quantum war machines. You cannot do this. There are laws. There are treaties. There are standards of civilized behavior. Those laws apply to civilized species, Song replied. We are not civilized. We are effective. Hive Queen Sectara-S crystalline structure was beginning to fracture as the Chronoton disruptors worked their way through her species' timeline. Why? Why such absolute destruction for what amounts to a territorial dispute? Song's expression remained unchanged. Because you were warned. Every species in this galaxy was told exactly what would happen if they interfered with Earth fleet operations. You chose to ignore that warning. The three commanders tried to speak again, but their forms were becoming increasingly unstable as their civilizations were systematically erased from existence. Within minutes, the communication links went dead. Colonel Lim monitored the progress of the elimination protocols from her tactical station. Sir, Valdorian Empire elimination is 93% complete. Nexus Federation erasure is at 87%. Crystal Hegemony timeline disruption is at 91%. Estimated time to complete elimination? 17 minutes. Sir, all Alliance military forces have been neutralized. Civilian populations are being processed by the quantum war machines. Historical erasure is proceeding on schedule. Song watched the tactical displays as three of the galaxy's oldest civilizations simply ceased to exist. The Valdorian Empire, which had ruled through superior technology for 8,000 years, was reduced to empty space. The Nexus Federation, masters of energy manipulation for 6,000 years, left no trace of their passing. The Crystal Hegemony, builders of living worlds for 4,000 years, was removed from the timeline so thoroughly that their achievements had never happened. Sir, reported Commander Kim Jin-woo from the communications station, we're receiving surrender transmissions from 47 different species. They're all requesting immediate cessation of hostilities and formal acknowledgement of Earth's fleet protection policies. Standard response, Song ordered. Inform them that Earth is not at war with their species and has no intention of taking action against them unless they interfere with our operations. He paused, looking at the now empty star charts where three mighty civilizations had existed moments before. Also inform them that the Alliance species have been eliminated as stated in our original policy. Their example should serve as clarification of our position. Within 23 minutes of the Alliance's first attack, 3 interstellar civilizations had been completely eliminated. The Second Earth Extermination Fleet had used weapons that defied comprehension, deployed with efficiency that terrified the galaxy's remaining species. The war that the Alliance had hoped would last months and end with human surrender had lasted less than half an hour and ended with the complete extinction of the attackers. Song made his final log entry of the mission. Multi-species elimination completed successfully. Alliance forces eliminated. Civilian populations eliminated. Historical presence eliminated. The galaxy's remaining species have been informed of the consequences of interference with Earth fleet operations. He looked out at the stars, wondering how long it would take for the next species to test humanity's resolve. The pattern was becoming clear. Warn once, eliminate completely, move on to the next threat. It was a simple system, and it worked perfectly. 6 months after the Alliance War, the surviving galactic civilizations gathered for what many believed would be their final council meeting. The great chamber of Nexus Prime felt empty with only 5 of the original 12 species remaining. The absent chairs served as silent reminders of what happened to those who tested humanity's resolve. The meeting was held aboard the human vessel Soul's Promise, a diplomatic ship that had arrived at Nexus Prime with an escort of 20 Earth fleet warships. Fleet Admiral Jang Mi-young commanded the flagship, her presence a clear reminder that humanity now held absolute power in the galaxy. Ambassador Lee Tae-ho, now bearing the title of Earth's Supreme Galactic Representative, entered the chamber with the same calm demeanor he had shown during first contact. Behind him walked Dr. Choi Yun-soo, carrying datapads containing Earth's new policies for galactic governance. The surviving alien representatives watched them with expressions that mixed fear, resignation, and desperate hope. Elder Counselor Vex Thura of the Helian Collective looked older than her 4,000 years, her blue skin having lost much of its natural shimmer. The stress of watching 7 civilizations vanish in the span of 6 months had taken its toll on all the survivors. Honored delegates, Lee began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who spoke for the galaxy's dominant species. We gather today to establish the new framework for galactic civilization. Recent events have demonstrated the consequences of interfering with Earth fleet operations. Today we formalize the structure that will prevent future misunderstandings. Hive singer Kethra of the Manted Chorus clicked his mandibles nervously. Supreme Representative Lee, we must ask, what are humanity's intentions for the remaining species? Will we be allowed to continue existing as independent civilizations? Lee gestured to Dr. Choi, who activated her datapad. A holographic display appeared showing the galaxy divided into colored zones. Most of space was marked in blue, while small areas around Earth's territories were marked in red. Earth's policy is simple, Lee explained. The galaxy is divided into protection zones and restriction zones. Within the protection zones, marked in blue, all surviving species may continue their normal activities without interference from Earth. You may govern yourselves, conduct trade, explore new worlds, and develop your civilizations as you see fit. The alien representatives leaned forward, desperate to understand the conditions of their survival. The restriction zones marked in red are areas where Earth fleet operations take priority. No non-human vessels may enter these zones without explicit permission from Earth Fleet Command. Violation of this restriction will result in the immediate elimination of the violating species. Strategist Quinder of the remaining Valdorian outposts, one of the few survivors of his species' elimination, spoke with mechanical precision. Supreme Representative, what constitutes interference with Earth fleet operations within these protection zones? Dr. Choi answered, any attempt to block, disable, inspect, or attack Earth vessels. Any attempt to restrict Earth fleet movement through your territories. Any attempt to coordinate military action against Earth interests. Any attempt to form alliances specifically targeting humanity. And the consequences remain the same? Asked Harmony Keeper Velther of the Helion Collective. Complete species elimination, Lee confirmed. This policy is absolute and non-negotiable. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this information. They were being offered survival, but only under humanity's terms. The age of independent galactic civilizations was over, Facet Mind Caxthul of the remaining crystal hegemony. Fragments spoke with the sound of grinding gemstones. What guarantees do we have that Earth will not simply eliminate us when we are no longer useful? Your species has demonstrated a concerning efficiency in total warfare. Lee's expression remained neutral. Earth does not eliminate species for being useless. We eliminate species for being threatening. As long as you never interfere with our fleet operations, you will survive until the heat death of the universe. He gestured toward the empty chairs where representatives of extinct civilizations once sat. The Zephyrians, Valdorians, Nexus Federation, and Crystal Hegemony were not eliminated because they were useless. They were eliminated because they chose to interfere with Earth fleet operations after being clearly warned of the consequences. Fleet Admiral Zhang stepped forward from her position near the chamber entrance. If I may add a practical consideration, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded extinction fleets. Earth's military doctrine is based on absolute deterrence. We maintain peace through the certainty of overwhelming retaliation, not through ongoing conquest or oppression. She activated her own display, showing current Earth fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Our fleets patrol the restriction zones and respond to specific threats. We do not occupy your worlds, tax your economies, or interfere with your internal affairs. You are free to live as you choose, as long as you do not threaten our operations. Elder Counselor Vexthara found her voice after long minutes of silence. This is not the galactic civilization we have known for thousands of years. You are asking us to accept a future where one species holds absolute power over all others. We are not asking, Lee replied quietly. We are informing you of the new reality. The old system of negotiated conflicts and limited warfare died with the Zephyrians. What exists now is a system of absolute consequences for absolute actions. Dr. Choi added, this system actually provides greater stability than what existed before. Under the old model, species constantly tested boundaries, engaged in proxy conflicts, and built alliances for future wars. Under the new model, the boundaries are clear and the consequences are certain. The representative of the Mantid Chorus raised a question that had been troubling many species. What happens to species that develop new military technologies? What happens when one of us becomes powerful enough to potentially threaten Earth? You are welcome to develop any technology you wish, Lee answered. You may build the largest fleets in galactic history. You may create weapons we have never seen. As long as you do not use those capabilities to interfere with Earth fleet operations, they pose no threat to your survival. Fleet Admiral Zhang smiled slightly, an expression that somehow managed to be both reassuring and terrifying. Earth's policy is reactive, not preemptive. We do not eliminate species for having the potential to threaten us. We eliminate species for actually threatening us. The discussion continued for several hours as the surviving species asked detailed questions about the new order. They learned that Earth would establish monitoring stations throughout the galaxy to ensure compliance with fleet protection protocols. They learned that violations would be investigated by Earth intelligence services and judged by human military tribunals. They learned that appeals were possible, but pardons were not. Most importantly, they learned that humanity intended to enforce these policies for as long as their species existed. As the formal session drew to a close, Vexthara asked the question that haunted every surviving civilization. Supreme Representative Lee, do you believe this system will truly bring peace to the galaxy? Lee considered the question carefully before answering. Elder Counselor, for the past 6 months there have been no wars between galactic civilizations. No species has attacked another. No territorial disputes have escalated to violence. Trade flows freely through established routes. Scientific cooperation continues between compatible species. He gestured toward the displays showing peaceful star systems throughout the protection zones. This level of stability has never existed in recorded galactic history. If this is not peace, it is the closest approximation our species have ever achieved. Dr. Choi closed her datapads and stood to address the assembly one final time. The choice facing your civilizations is simple. Accept the new order and prosper within the protection zones, or test our resolve and join the extinct species as cautionary examples. She paused, looking at each representative in turn. Choose wisely. History suggests that most species choose poorly when dealing with humanity. The meeting ended with formal acceptance of Earth's terms by all surviving species. Documents were signed, protocols were established, and communication networks were upgraded to ensure instant contact with Earth Fleet Command in case of emergencies. As the alien representatives departed, many wondered if they had just signed their own eventual death warrants or secured their species' survival for millennia to come. In the months that followed, the new system proved remarkably effective. Conflicts between species virtually disappeared. Trade flourished under Earth's protection. Scientific advancement accelerated as species no longer devoted massive resources to military buildups against each other. The galaxy had entered the age of Pax Humana, where peace was maintained not through mutual understanding or shared values, but through the simple recognition that some lines must never be crossed. On distant worlds, alien children learned new lessons in their schools. They learned about the extinct civilizations that had once ruled the stars. They learned about the consequences of interfering with Earth's fleet. Most importantly, they learned that, in the new galaxy, survival depended on understanding that humans did not make threats, they made promises, and they always kept them.